My name is Simon Conrad. I'm a sophomore at the Evergreen State College, spring 2013. I work with the CIRAL group, which is the Civic Intelligence Research and Action Lab. I have really enjoyed this program. I've been taking it all year, where my studies have been leading me to, the cluster that I joined was called StoryWorks, where we wanted to get people who are disenfranchised or who are marginalized get their stories out, and we wanted to do that through storytelling, especially digital storytelling. The first quarter I did quite a bit of research on digital storytelling. I read a lot of books, did a lot of research on the internet, worked with other students in the class who had done digital storytelling, and decided that was a route that I wanted to go. At first I wanted to interview incarcerated youth, but I realized that it would be difficult to get inside of facilities to do interviews, especially ones that were visual. So then I decided maybe I would just do audio interviews. At that point in time, the idea of doing audio sounded great to me, but I was still having issues getting inside the facilities. So what I decided to do was to pick another group. So I decided to start my individual project, which fit inside of StoryWorks, which was called Interview with an Atheist. The project was going to be, I would interview atheists from a very wide spectrum, from hard atheists to people who are a bit more agnostic. And what the plan was is I was then going to turn those interviews into 3 podcasts, and then have those put up on YouTube or on the CIRAL website, which is the Public Sphere project, where people could watch these. And what I wanted to do was increase civic intelligence, which of course is a community of people coming together, pulling their resources of the information they have to fix issues inside that community. And I feel like in order to fix issues inside of a community, you have to be educated. So I wanted to do that through this project so people could better understand people who identify as atheist or agnostic or just non-believers. So what ended up happening is my project was stolen. My laptop, my notes, everything, all my backup files were stolen at just about 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks before the end of this quarter. And so everything was gone. I had done a bit of editing for the audio that I had, but it was all gone. So what I've decided to do is put together an oral presentation, which is this video, which funny enough is me telling my story of the research of what I've been doing this quarter, and moving into the actual interviews themselves. And I think it's going to be pretty good. So one thing I do want to go into is why did I choose atheists? I am an atheist myself. Me and my partner are both atheists. But I do feel that, well, right now in this country, in the United States, there's a huge move towards secularism. Atheism, agnostic, non-believers are actually the largest growing religious belief, or belief system, I should say, here in the United States. And there's a lot of pushback from that because people have such a hard time understanding what it actually means to be an atheist. And so what I decided to do was to make a project where atheists can explain themselves and their story and why they're atheists and what they'd like to see, and people can see that it's not scary at all, and that in the end, actually, I think a more secular society would be better for everyone. In a secular society, when secularism is the thing that is holding up our laws and policies, all religious belief systems are protected. There's no favoritism. I think religion is a wonderful thing, and I am so glad that in this country we have freedom of religion, and I want to protect that, and I think a good way to protect it is through secularism. I feel that religion and God should be very personal. It should be in the home, and it should not be brought into public schools, government. Like I said, laws and policies, those need to be secular to make sure that we're always being fair to all religious belief systems, including people who do not believe. I interviewed, the way that I found the people that I interviewed, I actually ended up getting about 12 hours worth of interviews, and that's what I did the second quarter, winter quarter of 2013. I did a lot of research around atheism and secularism. I also did quite a bit of research on how to do audio editing. I did that a lot this quarter as well. But what I decided to do is I wanted a wide spectrum. I did not just want to interview friends and family. So I put up an event on Facebook, but made sure that it was, let people know, please share this as a public event. And I actually ended up interviewing quite a few people that I had never met before, and some of those interviews were great. I did interview some friends, but not quite as many as I would have thought. So in the interviews, I would ask specific questions. I think there were about 10 questions, and of course, with some people, the questions would, veer off, and we'd end up talking about something really different that I did in other interviews. But in the end, I did try to stick to these. No matter what I asked, these particular questions. And one of the great things that I found in these interviews was a feeling of camaraderie. People felt really connected when I would explain the project, when I would tell them what I was planning on doing with the project. People would actually ask me what other people said to questions and things like that. And there was this camaraderie. There was a very sweet connection that was being made. And I don't think it's just because we were atheists, but I think because we were atheists who wanted to see change, that wanted to get their story out and explain what atheism is to that person. And so I found a lot of really great people who had a lot of wonderful things to say. The first question I would ask everyone is, why are you an atheist? And I got a plethora of answers. Some people would say as a child they just could never get into church or religion. They just were very skeptical of God and religion, and that they felt fine that their family members and friends were religious, but they just never felt it. And so what would end up happening is that they would kind of resent going to church, and kind of there'd be a pushback. And then when they were in their teenage years, they broke away from the church and religion altogether and came out as atheists. Pardon me. And but there were also people who, one person that I interviewed actually grew up atheist, and when he was a teenager he found God and began going to church, and he did that until his early 20s. And then doing research, reading the Bible, taking part in church and religious studies, he found himself becoming very skeptical and actually came back to atheism. And it was interesting because when he came out as an atheist to his family, they were all really thrilled and really felt like he was kind of coming back to them. They felt like they'd kind of lost him for a while and felt a bit disconnected. Most other people had very religious families who had and have a very hard time with them being atheists. They said that it is sometimes a lot of tension in the family, and there can be some arguments going back and forth. But most people said that they were accepted and people would respect their beliefs. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that, if you have mutual respect, I do think there are atheists and non-believers out there who can be very, very critical of those who are religious. And I think that that's just religious persecution on a completely different level. And everyone I spoke to said that, they're fine with people believing in God. They don't have a problem with it. But they do have a problem with being forced or to made feel guilty for not. So one of the things that I found interesting is there have been many studies about where atheists lie in the larger community or society, in what people think, if you say you're an atheist, what your morals might be. And unfortunately, atheists rank very, very low. People think that if you're an atheist, you have no heart, that you're dangerous, that strangely enough, a lot of people think that atheist means Satan worship, which is obviously not true. If you don't believe in God, you don't believe in Satan. And so what I did, one of the questions that I asked was, can you be a good person without God? And everyone said yes. Every single person said yes. And the reason why they felt that way was, again, a plethora of answers. But one of the main reasons was they felt that their love for humanity had nothing to do with God. It had to do with themselves. That they love people. They don't worship a God. They worship humanity. And one of the things someone said was that, I would much rather be able to say that where my humanity comes from is from me and not from God. Some people think if you're an atheist, you'll want to rape and kill. But if the only reason why a person's not raping and killing people is because of their belief in God, that's not a very good reason. And I have a feeling that person right there has some issues with their moral standing. Everything good that atheists do is coming from themselves. They want to be good. They want to do good. They're not trying to get points so they can go to heaven. And therefore, you're living for yourself and for people instead of living for God. So they felt, yes, you could definitely be a very good person without God. I asked, one of the final questions that I asked that got a really interesting reaction was, what happens when you die? And I thought that it was wonderful because everyone said the same thing, in that when you die, you just kind of turn off. You kind of go into an endless sleep. But one of the wonderful things is it doesn't really matter what happens to someone when they die. What really matters is what happens to their family, their friends, their spouses, which I thought was very sweet, to, instead of constantly obsessing through your life, what's going to happen to me when I die, what you really think about, where your mind really is what will happen to my family. I asked if they thought it was sad that they would never see their loved ones after they pass, and they said, well, I won't know, I'm not, because I'm not there anymore, but where I do lie is in the hearts and minds of those who I touched and loved. And I thought that was very, very sweet. You can, one person said, you can look at it like, oh, I'm never gonna, I'm not gonna descend to heaven and see all my friends and family again. There instead, like, well, I've lived a good life. I did all the best things that I could. I don't need more time if I live the way I want to live. Which I thought was a really sweet thought. If you live right and you do the things you want to do when you die, you shouldn't really have any regret. You should feel good about the life you lived. So one of the other questions was, I just asked people, tell me about your life. And again, I interviewed quite a few people. I interviewed one person. She has several children, and she's married, and she works for a wonderful nonprofit to help stop domestic violence in Washington State. And, she just loves her life. She loves her kids. She loves her husband. She does great work. She has a wonderful community. She lives in Seattle. She has a great community of people that she just adores. And she's just a really happy person. I asked another person, tell me about your life. And he said, well, I have a girlfriend, and she has a little boy, and I do all I can to help her out. I get up in the morning and I drink coffee and smoke a cigarette and go to work and come home and clean my house. And, he's just said, I'm like any other American. I just don't worship God. And that, he said, atheism doesn't really take up much of my time. It's just a part of who I am, just like any religious person. Which I thought was really wonderful. I interviewed one person who's a student and wants to do some work with Greenpeace and really wants to dedicate himself to the humanities and helping people, and really wants to travel and go to places that need help. And he said that he just wants everyone in the world to have a chance to be happy and to survive. And but he also has a lot of a science background and is a very skeptical person, but he's not skeptical about what's right and wrong around the treatment of people, which I thought was really, really wonderful. Some of the other questions that I asked, especially people who had children, is how do you explain your religious beliefs or your non-belief to your children? And there were some really great answers. Most people just said, it's just, like any other conversation with my children ask me, who made that tree or how did that happen? I just give them a very straightforward answer of, oh, well, trees come from the ground and they grow and they come from seeds and water, and these are the, it's a beautiful thing, and explaining just how the world works and dinosaurs and just being as scientifically correct and spot on as they possibly can. But then when they talk to them about love between people is where they really bring in this idea, this idea of what humanity is and what it means to take care of each other and why we should take care of each other. And, you want to be a good person, you want to be good to people because you want to do unto others as they do unto you. And that's really where a lot of the softness comes in, because I know some people feel that if you're an atheist, you're not a very caring or loving person, which in these interviews I found that to be the complete opposite. These people were very passionate about humanity, about the treatment of other people. I don't think I interviewed a single person who didn't bring up just wanting to do good in the world and wanting to see things be fair and feeling that, a secular government is something that could really help with that, especially in other countries around the world, not just here in the United States. And it was great. The interviews just went wonderfully. It was a really good time, and I really wish I could have made the podcast. The way this project has affected me personally is I really feel as though I feel more connected to being an atheist, and I also feel that there is a lot here to get out to the world. I feel I would really like to see more done around getting the word out that being an atheist is not scary. There's a thing called Good Without God. There are a lot of wonderful groups out there that are atheist-based that do wonderful, wonderful work, and that we should all just accept each other for our belief systems, and that includes non-believers. Some say that when you're an atheist, you don't believe in anything, but that's not true. Doing this and doing these interviews, I realize that atheists do believe in quite a bit. It's just a lot of those belief systems are based in people and humanity. It's actually quite positive that people are good. What I would love to see with storytelling, I would love to see the group move on into next year or over the summer. I think what would be great is if Storyworks, what I'd love to see is Storyworks maybe start up a web page where people can just post their story, tell a short story, people can comment on it, tell their story, and just have a place where people can go. Maybe they don't quite understand, again, what it's like to be an atheist, or maybe they don't understand, what it's like, being a single mom, or any of these things. They can go on and they can hear someone's story. And I think once we really start listening to one another is when the best change can come about. When we truly have all the information and can understand, it can kind of strip away some of the fear. I want to thank you for watching, and please tell your story, because you never know who might be changed by it. Thank you.